Show me the money, you say? Show me the money? I'll show you. I got this many ones right here. And with this many ones, I could order the dollar menu twice. Party! Money. Amen. People who say it can't buy you happiness have apparently never shopped at Target. I can get quite a bit of happiness right there. But I don't really understand how it works. I mean, I get it. You have money and they have stuff and you trade money for stuff. But it's all the accounting part that kind of drives me crazy because I'm not really smart at math. I missed a day or two, obviously, when they were talking about simple subtraction and addition. But when it comes to my checkbook, I don't worry about it anymore. This is my new method. I look online and see what the bank says my ending balance is. And then I think about how much money I put in. And I think about how many checks I wrote. And if the number in my mind and the number they have on the screen are less than $25 apart, I just go with their number. They're the bank. They're supposed to know what's coming in and out. It's their job, not my job, to keep up with it. Hello. For that $25, I just bought myself a little piece of sanity. But the people that say money can't buy you love, I think that was Proverbs, or maybe it was the Beatles. They're right. It can't buy you love. But believe me, I've had money and I've had no money. And if you have money, you can definitely buy yourself a better brand of misery.
Today's lesson is Show Me the Money, all about managing our finances. When I was first married, we were broke. We had paid for our wedding ourselves, we bought a house, and we were paying for my college tuition. Most months, we didn't have enough pennies to scrape together to pay our expenses. We literally were ramen noodle poor. But as we look back at that time, we can just laugh at the creative ways that we managed life without a lot of funding. We had a very tiny kitchen. It was 9 by 9 empty. And my stove was about this big. And the very first month that we lived in our house, it decided to die. But the part to repair it cost almost as much as a new stove. So it stayed broken. Luckily, I had the cooktop and I had a microwave and I had a large toaster oven that I could still prepare meals. So we managed. Later that fall, a friend of ours offered her oven to us because she was remodeling her kitchen. And excited at the prospect of doing our first Thanksgiving, we accepted. There was a problem though. This was a full-size stove. It wouldn't fit in our kitchen. And it had a funny plug that didn't work in our kitchen at all. So, not one to let a problem keep us from our first turkey, we connected the oven directly to the electrical box in the bedroom. We can honestly say we really cook in there. When I finished school and started working full-time, our money crunch eased a bit. But neither one of us ever really learned how to manage money. Once we moved to Georgia and we were attending a church there, they offered a Bible study on how to manage money. So we signed up and we learned that there are a lot of practical ways that we can honor God with our money. We learned that the Bible has over 2,000 verses about money, from saving to giving and everything in between. It described God's economy as one that is countercultural to the world's economy. It's one where the Lord is center of our finances. So today we're going to discuss what is God's role, what is our role, and how can we be responsible with our finances. In 1 Chronicles 29, King David commissioned his son Solomon to build a magnificent temple to the Lord. And King David himself gave out of his personal treasury gold and silver and precious stones. And the Jewish people, they followed suit and gave generously. And I'm sure that King David, he thanked the people as they made an offering. But why was he praising God? It was the people who brought the offering. David answers that question himself in 1 Chronicles 29:11. For everything in heaven and earth is yours. Yours, Lord, is the kingdom. You are exalted as head over all. And David went on to say, he wrote Psalm 24, he went on to say, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. It's all His. Everything on the world is His. That includes our homes and our 401ks. Just recently, we finished updating our kitchen, and my husband had spent the weekend with the finishing touches of the paint. On Monday morning, he went off to work, and I started the laundry and went about my daily task. And before long, I heard water dripping. I raced to the washer to see that the fill valve had malfunctioned. The water never shut off. It filled the tub, poured over, seeped through the floor, and collapsed the ceiling in our newly renovated kitchen on the hardwood floors. I just cried. I called my husband. He came home to help with the cleanup, and he saw the gaping hole in the ceiling and said, "I guess God just wants a hole in the ceiling." You see, it wasn't the first or the second time we had had a leak from there. And Bill was right. It's all God's. The washing machine, the ceiling, the house, it's all His. Job learned this himself when we're told of the account of how he was sifted by Satan. He lost everything, all his wealth. He even lost his family. But he fell down and he worshiped God. He understood that we arrive with nothing and we're going to leave with nothing. He understood that the Lord can give it and the Lord can take away. God's role in the realm of our finances is simple. He is the provider and He gives us all that we have. So what's our role? We are to deny ownership and accept Christ's lordship. Luke 14:33 says, "If any of you wishes to be my disciples, you must deny your possessions." Now, do we need to be homeless and penniless to be believers? I really don't think so. I think what it's saying is we're denying our right to own things, that it is the Lord's. Our role is stewardship. 1 Corinthians says, a steward should be found trustworthy. In Matthew 25, there's the parable of the talents. A master was going away on a journey, and to his first servant he gave him 5 talents. Now a talent is a unit of money. To the second servant he gave 2 talents, and to the third he gave 1. The first servant invested his talents right away, and he doubled his money. The second servant invested his talents and also made 100% return on his investment. The third servant, however, he just buried his talent. When the master came back and wanted to know how his servants had managed his business while he was gone, the first servant gave an account, and the master said, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with little. Now I will put you in charge of much. Come and rejoice and celebrate with your master." To the second servant, the same response. But to the third, who buried his talent, he chastised him as wicked and lazy. You see, a good steward is not going to be afraid to use the resources that God has given us. But rather, we're going to understand that we're to use what's been provided not only for our necessities in life, but for His kingdom. We are not to earn money for the sake of earning money, but rather to have resources available to be able to address the needs that He puts in front of us. Commentator Ray Stedman says, "It is a temporary vehicle for permanent good." We are going to be accountable for how we handle money, whether we feel we've been given little or whether we've been given much, whether we've been neglectful or good managers. It's not about how much we have, but about how we use what we have. Our money is important to the Lord because it reflects our relationship with Him. Jesus said, "Do not store up for yourself treasures on earth, but store up for yourself treasures in heaven. For where our treasure lies, there our heart will be." We spend money on what's important to us. So our spending habits reflect the condition of our heart. That's because possessions compete for the Lord's attention. It says in Matthew 6 that you cannot serve two masters. You're either going to love one and hate the other, be devoted to one or despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. That's because money is the image of a rival God. We all need money in life, but we don't need to chase after it. Finally, our money is important to the Lord because we spend so much of our time earning it and spending it and deciding how we're going to save and invest it. So He wants us coming to Him for advice on what to do with our money. Several years ago, our youngest daughter wanted us to join the church mission trip to Brazil. We were excited about the opportunity to go overseas for the first time, but I was also very apprehensive. It was at the time that my oldest was just starting college, and it was the time that the recession really was hitting us hard. We had no extra money in the budget for a trip. And we were encouraged to send out support letters, but I thought we should be able to just pay for this. It was humbling asking for money to go on a trip. But God, oh so gently, reminded me that I was being prideful. You see, not everybody is able to go to teach about the Word of God, but they can help send people financially. And it was just the beginning of how God was showing us how His economy worked. You see, our faith grew as God used other believers to fund our trip quickly and completely. And when we went to Brazil, hundreds upon hundreds of people accepted the Lord Jesus Christ. Every single person who helped us go financially also earned an eternal return on investment. Now that we know our role in God's economy, let's discuss some practical ways that we can be responsible with what has been entrusted with us. We're going to start by giving an offering. Leviticus 27:30 says we're going to bring a tithe to the Lord of all that we receive. Now, if we trace back that original word tithe, it's ma'aser, which means tenth. In the book of Malachi, it says we're robbing God if we don't bring Him the full tithe. It also says that we're to test Him in this to see if He does not pour out blessing on us. Now, let me clarify. This is not an investment strategy. I think it means we become richer in our relationship with God as we give. You see, the Lord loves a cheerful giver. He wants us to give as an outpouring of our heart, not as an obligation. We are, however, obligated to get out and stay out of debt. Impulsive and reactionary spending is the biggest source of debt we have. Nations and families alike are saddled with debt. Yet God says in His Word, owe nothing to anyone, and actually says that the borrower becomes the lender's slave. The bigger the debt and the less our ability is to pay it, the stronger the oppression is on us. Now we owe instead of being free to give, to save, and to spend. Debt presumes that we're going to continue to earn at the same level that we are now or better, that there'll be no downsizing, no illness, no accidents. When I started college, I received my first credit card. I was so excited to go shopping. And I had every intention of paying that bill off in full when it came. However, there just seemed to always be something that needed my money. And before long, I couldn't pay that bill very well. In fact, every penny I earned now went to that credit card bill. So if we have debt, eliminating it needs to be a high priority. We are going to create a spending plan. We need to know where our money goes and how we are spending it. People in our culture, and Christians included, we see something we want, we buy it without giving a second thought. The problem is Everything we do as believers should glorify God, and rarely does impulsive and reactionary spending glorify Him. He provides us with what we need, and we need to be wise with our use of that provision. So we're going to set some financial goals as a first step in our spending plan. We see this principle demonstrated in Luke 14, when they're going to build a tower, and they sit down and they calculate the cost of the tower to see if they have enough to build it. Now, we may not be building towers these days, but we need to plan how we're going to spend our money. And if we married, we need to do this with our husband. If we have debt, our first goal is to get rid of it. But after that, you decide how you're going to spend your money. Maybe you want to buy a house, or send a child to college, or fund a ministry. Your goals are not only going to glorify God, but it's going to keep you and your husband on the same page. According to Money Magazine, most couples average 3 money fights a month, with the common triggers being insufficient savings, unexpected expenses, and differing opinions of needs versus wants. By setting financial goals, you're going to eliminate many of those arguments. In the parable of the talents, the servants had to give an account of how they managed what was left for them. And we need to do the same thing. The next step in creating a spending plan is knowing what we own, what we owe, and where it goes. We're going to track our expenses. When my husband and I first started tracking our expenses, we were shocked. He used to eat out almost every single day for lunch at about $7 to $10 average cost. That came to $1,500 a year. That's a mortgage payment. And our coffee shop visits that we both enjoyed, $720 a year. That's a set of tires for the car. And my manicures that I like to get, $480 a year. That's enough to sponsor a needy child. We were amazed to see how quickly our money disappeared, but also how quickly little purchases add up to big amounts. So when we're following a spending plan, it's important to track what we're spending. And you can use the computer to do this. There are programs that are designed specifically for managing a budget. There are also comprehensive programs that will do all of your finances so you can see not only where your money's going, but how it's growing. There are phone apps so you can have money management right at your fingertips. And I have a list of resources for you in your workbook, but it doesn't really matter which one you choose. Just be comfortable and be on it regularly. If you want a non-computerized version to manage your budget, I would suggest an envelope system. My in-laws taught us how to use the envelope method of tracking our expenses when we were newlyweds. We would go to the bank and cash our check and fund different envelopes with cash. And then we would spend out of that envelope. For example, when we were going out to eat, we would take the dining envelope, and then we would pay for the restaurant bill out of that envelope. And when that envelope was empty, it was gone. We didn't eat out anymore. If we needed to go to the food store, we would take the envelope for the grocery store. I remember one particular trip, I needed to buy quite a bit extra because we had family coming to town, and we were still on a slim budget. So I clipped my coupons and I planned out which stores to go to make sure I got the best deal. And I brought my calculator along so I could keep track of my spending. And I was getting excited because my cart seemed to have quite a bit in it. So I go up to the register, put everything on the conveyor, and I was shocked. The register was about double what I thought it was going to be. Somewhere along the line, my calculator had reset itself, and I was so embarrassed. I had to put a lot of those treats back because I was on a cash basis. I could not go over budget. You know, with direct deposit and plastic cards, it is so easy to just swipe and let our budget slide. You know, so spending cash is one way that we can really be disciplined with our money. We're going to set up categories to track our expenses. Your fixed expenses, such as your mortgage and your utility payments, those are going to be pretty easy. But the groceries, the gifts, the entertainment, oh, and that dreaded miscellaneous account, those are the ones that blow our budget. So we're going to want to keep our categories nice and broad. Have household expenditures, not cleaning products, paper products, pet food. The goal isn't to micromanage, but just to have an idea of how we're spending. We're also going to want to have an allowance for ourselves. You know, a certain amount of pocket money that we're not going to track every penny. This is great for an occasional treat or lunch with a friend. We need to remember those infrequent bills as well, such as the homeowner's dues or the life insurance premiums that come once a year, and an emergency fund. We never know when we're going to have an unexpected car repair or a crisis. And by going ahead and planning and starting to save and put money away for that, you'll be prepared when that happens. And we're going to take a clue from businesses. Businesses review their budget every single year. Do you still need the same categories? Do you need the same amount allocated to those categories? We find in our household that tax time is a great time to go over our budget since we're already in the financial mindset. And the bonus to tracking your spending is it's going to make your tax preparation much smoother. Know your temptations. If you're an impulse shopper, stay away from the mall. Don't watch the shopping networks. Don't subscribe to those prepaid discount websites. You know, you've heard it, make a list and stick to it. We want to do that. And definitely don't grocery shop hungry. You know, when my husband and I decided to take God at His word with our financial life, we had to commit to eliminating debt and living within our means. It was not easy. We could make a budget that looked balanced on paper, but something would happen every month to kind of knock it off track. But God blessed us in unique ways, and because we were earnestly trying to be obedient to His word, we were able to see His activity in our life through our finances. You know, it took us a while to learn that there are stages of your financial life. You know, when you're just starting off and your career is just getting going, we are tempted to spend and instantly create a lifestyle for ourselves, often the ones we left from our parents or better. But it takes a while to establish financial stability. And with proper planning and saving, you will be ready for the final stage of your financial life, retirement. Now, a final suggestion I have for you is even though you and your husband should be on the same page as far as what your goals are with your finances, often one of you has a better idea of the details in the financial picture. And if one of you or both of you were to die, would somebody left behind be able to find your banking information, your insurance policies, or your retirement account? I suggest making a financial life on one page, or a FLOP for the acronym. This is a spreadsheet type document that has all your pertinent financial information on it. Your financial institutions, the account numbers, all the contact information. You know, when we understand what God's role is in finances as provider of everything and our role as stewards, then we can cheerfully carry out our responsibilities. It's not easy, but we can live within a budget. And if you feel you are so far in a hole that there is no hope, that's exactly what Satan would like you to believe. But with Christ, all things are possible. When we ask for His guidance, He will give it to us and He will direct our financial path. An amazing woman lives financially free.
I was raised in a Christian home and both parents and grandparents were believers. I asked Jesus in my heart at a young age. Later, I followed my dad, who's an anesthesiologist, and I became a nurse anesthetist so that we could work together. However, during my anesthesia training, I decided that money was the key to my happiness. Even though I'd seen how a biblical marriage worked and I had benefited from the stability and joy of parents that loved each other, I was convinced that marriage and children would stand in the way of making a lot of money and having a lot of fun. Then God brought Russ, the best-looking male I ever saw. However, he was a teacher and he wanted children. When he asked me to marry him, I said, absolutely not. I wasn't going to live on a teacher's salary and be poor the rest of my life, and I definitely wasn't going to have children. God met me one night, woke me up actually, and we wrestled over two things: submission and money. I believed that money would make me happy, and without it, I couldn't be happy. I poured out my heart to God and asked why I was so confused, why this was such a struggle, and the answer was that God is not the author of confusion. And so I began to confess, and I was able to think much clearer. God reminded me that money's no problem to him. The cattle on 1,000 hills are his, and if I let him meet my need for fun and happiness, I wouldn't put pressure on Russ that God never meant him to have. I told the Lord that night that I would marry Russ, and I would trust God to give me what I needed. It hit me that if money could give contentment, then Hollywood actors and pro athletes should be the most happy, peaceful, content people in the world. But we all know that's not true, so money isn't the answer. I also knew that I could not let circumstances determine my happiness. I like the story of the two little boys and 2 rooms of manure. Each is given a shovel and told to start shoveling. The first boy grumbled and complained. The other boy was happy and excited. He shoveled and sang. The reason? There had to be a pony in there somewhere. Contentment is satisfied, pleased, happy, a mind at peace, not wanting more, free from anxiety. Hebrews is my favorite. Let your character be free from the love of money, and be content or satisfied with your present circumstances and with what you have. Ecclesiastes says, "He who loves silver will not be satisfied with silver." To me, money is a cruel boss. If I love money, I can never be happy or satisfied. 1 year after we were married, God put me in the crucible when we moved, and I had to leave my beloved horse and job. I ended up spending hours with the Lord, learning to get my contentment from Him and encouraging my new husband in his new job. All we had was each other and the Lord, and we were satisfied. It's helped me to look at the opposite of content, which is discontent. It means a disquieted mind, a restless desire for more. When I start complaining, it's a warning that my heart isn't right. Over the years, I have found that as I walk in the Spirit, contentment has allowed me to joyfully do what God has asked and equipped me for in my role as wife and mother.